Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock here Eastern time. This is Ken Willie from KOW Building Consultants. Some of you may have been on some of our previous webinars, or this may be your first one. So either way, welcome or welcome back. We're going to be talking to you today. I'm going to be talking to you about best practices in reviewing draw documents. We're going to go to about 2 o'clock. If we have any time at the end, I'll open it up for questions, but certainly if you want to go ahead and jot my information down there on the screen, you could see not only the QR code, but also my information in the top right. Again, I'm Ken Willie, President CEO of KOW Building Consultants. We are a New York-based national firm providing energy, environmental, construction, and building assessment services. We don't swing a hammer, but we certainly consult, inspect, and guide people and clients on financial institution involvement, tax credits, development, refis, purchases, acquisitions, renos, pretty much everything. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is keeping in line with all my other webinars and seminars is a topic that a client asked for. I will take zero credit. A client said, can you put one together? It's like, I don't know what you look for when you do a draw inspection. And I said, what about best practices in reviewing draw documents? So thank you. The client world has asked, and we've tried to respond with what we feel is most important. So that's going to be today's goal, best practices in reviewing draw documents. And I don't even want to stop now and define what draw documents are because that's part of the slides. So first of all, let's set the table. Let's discuss reviewing draw documents in line with the requisition. Again, stay tuned in a few moments. We're going to have some definitions. But what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to go in order of typical importance. When we are reviewing a draw, a request for payment for hard monies in place or requested in line with a requisition. So I'm going to go in order of typical importance. I will also say, please remember, I'm trying to use a very broad brush here. So I'm trying to throw into the same soup a $300,000 renovation and $150 million ground up. And that's pretty hard to do. So I'm trying to kind of use a broad brush. Please accept my apologies if you say, well, I had a project recently that went a different way, or yeah, that's going to happen. I'm giving you kind of the baseline foundation. I'd also like to say that my goal when it comes to these educational webinars or seminars, if they're in person, is to try to reach the audience in a few different ways. And I look at it as if I do my job today, I have 3 audience members that come away a little happier. One is someone who's brand new on the job, just started doing this, first job, first week. There's the restrooms. There's where you get your coffee, and here's how you do your expense report. Brand new on the job. I want you to be part of this today and say, I retained some of what he went over, hopefully a lot of that. So I'm going to do real plain English as we move. Second is someone who's been doing this a little while, has been in the field maybe a little bit, and says, oh, you know, that looked familiar, and I really like that you kind of filled in some things I haven't seen yet. And then the third most lofty goal is I want someone who's been doing this a while to say, yeah, Willie, I know exactly what you're talking about, but you touched on a couple things today that it was a good perspective. It gave me a different way to look at it or think about it. So that's how I'm going to approach this. So first, I'm going to say, I'm going to go in order of typical importance as far as our role is concerned in reviewing the draw documents. And the number one key is the application for payment. Again, definitions to come. Remember, this doesn't have to be monthly. It very often is monthly. And why is that? Well, again, I'm using a broad brush. Most projects operate in a similar fashion in that the general contractor is responsible to build, renovate, or develop this building or buildings in line with the contract documents, schedule, and budget. And in doing so, they're subbing out to their plumbers, their masons, their roofers, etc., a lot, if not all of the work. And for the most part, this is done on a monthly billing cycle. So for example, I could walk on site for requisition number 1 and say to the construction super, which we say this, hey, how do you set up your calendar for your subs? And if they say something like, well, we tell our subs, and a sub or a subcontractor in this case would be, say, the plumber. We say to them, hey, you need to, Mr. and Ms. Plumber, you need to present to us by the 25th of the month what you've gotten done that month, and we will review it and let you know if we're okay with it. And then in or about the first week of the next month, you'll get paid. So that monthly cycle sets the table for everything we do. It's a monthly central or master requisition, which is built upon monthly subcontractor requisitions. Again, I'm broad brushing it. Some clients of ours say you must visit monthly. Some don't. Some say you're allowed to visit twice a month. Some don't allow that. When would you do twice a month? Usually fast track, poured in place concrete projects. They're going to move really, really fast. They're not doing 7-day tests. They're doing 3-day tests for concrete cylinders, etc. That is part of the industry. That does happen twice a month. Sometimes it's every other month. We've had certain clients that said, I want you to go every quarter. We're not a tremendous fan of that, because I want to preface this by saying, if I go to do an inspection for a client and I'm there 2 hours and they're working 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and half day Saturday, I'm there 1% of the time. So monthly is really the absolute least amount we should be there. But that's why it falls into a monthly basis, is because it lines up with a billing cycle that the contractor sets for the job. One of the things you're going to see me mention is logs. Whenever you hear us say logs, just think it's a snapshot. It's a summary. And the snapshot, again, I'm going to get into this in a few moments, then allows us to say, what do I need to look into further? What do I need to push here? What do I have more questions on? And I like to say to our inspectors, you don't need all the answers, but you need all the questions. You need to start the discussion to get into where your comfort level needs to go. And certain replies or answers will take the conversation away maybe you didn't anticipate. So logs are a really good snapshot for us, and then we know where we want to apply our attention. It also helps to mention that as a consultant, if we have a weaker design professional or a stronger one, a great owner's rep or no owner's rep, a very qualified super or a very inexperienced super, we're going to kind of ebb and flow where we put our attention based on where we need to get comfortable with more effort or less effort. So when we do a review of draw documents, we do an inspection to look at the draw documents. We're doing a few things. Number one, we're protecting against overfunding. The second most important dollar value in our funding recommendation report is what should be funded this month. The most important is the cost to complete, or the remaining funds. We cannot issue a funding report with a number that does not leave enough money on the table to complete the project. And, I could say to a contractor, if you're thrown in jail tomorrow, what happens to, or you're hit by a bus, what happens to the completion of this project? Although I've gotten smarter in my career. Now I say, you hit lotto tomorrow and you buy an island just off the coast of, Puerto Rico or something, we never see you again, and you disappear with your millions of dollars. Then what? Who finishes this project? So we're protecting against overfunding for the work in place and the request. Number one, we're looking at risk. And you'll hear that as we go along here. We're always looking at risk. Risk is everything. And we don't mind risk. You don't mind risk. We just don't like surprises. We just have to properly assess risk. I'm going to beat up on the Jets because, one, they're the Jets, and two, I'm a Jet fan. You could put a bet down today for the Jets to win the Super Bowl this year. And I know some crazy Jet fans that think that's not a bad bet. That's a fine bet, but your risk and reward better be aligned. That better be something that is a really nice payoff for the bet because of the risk involved. We're confirming work in place and non-work in place. So we're looking at the request and confirming what's been requested is appropriate. We're identifying early warning signs. And that's a big one. And that's one that's, we can have all the formulas we want, but we're really kind of gut checking all the pieces of the project And when we're reviewing the draw documents, when we're inspecting the site and we're having the meeting, we're identifying early warning signs. I'll just give you a little sidebar here. If you look at an owner architect contractor meeting, OAC meeting, and this is again for very new employees that are watching now or even more experienced, and you look at an owner architect contractor meeting, that is a meeting that has owner, architect, contractor, as well as our role, perhaps a city or state or finance agency role, perhaps an owner's rep, some other players, maybe an energy and environmental person. And when you look at how these roles come together, that OAC meeting, owner, architect, contractor meeting, doesn't happen on every job. It happens on some jobs. Sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's weekly. It really can vary quite a bit. But what's interesting is when COVID hit, we, the collective we, were all forced to say, how do we do OAC meetings now in the world of COVID? And what we all did a really good job of, the collective we went right to technology and we started doing Zooms and Teams and all that. It's been interesting to me what's happened. We haven't gone back to where we were. OAC meetings now used to be, you were in the trailer. You were sitting in a chair in the trailer, in the construction office. That's where the OAC meeting happened. Now it's remote. Very often now it's Teams or Zoom. Now, we, as in KOW's role, we still need to do our inspection, but the OAC meeting is really remote now. Part of me doesn't like that because I liked, and I'm old school, when we're there with 6 or 8 or 10 people, I could see with regard to early warning signs, body language, responsiveness, how well people were working together. You could feel and see that in the meeting with how everyone was working together. So that's gone, generally speaking, where you don't have those face-to-face meetings. But here's where I love remote meetings. I love remote meetings because, and you should, I believe, our clients should embrace this. I could have a job in Boston. I have an inspector in Boston, piece of cake. But if my client is in San Francisco, the beauty of it now is my client in San Francisco can say, you know what, I'm getting a little concerned about that project. I'm going to be on the next OAC meeting, and I don't have to hop on a plane from San Francisco and come to Boston. So I actually love the fact that it's open to those who want to attend it, albeit not in person. It allows logistically to be more of a possibility. So back to the early warning signs. We're reading all these things. We're looking at all these things when we review draw documents to see, is there potential trouble ahead? And remember, early warning sign is not a problem. It's a potential problem. So if we have a job that has really good staff, we go out there and there's always 80, 90, 100 workers based on the size of the site. And then I go out there a couple months in a row and it's 10 or 15 workers, start asking questions. That's an early warning sign. Now, maybe they stopped the project because they're doing a redesign. Maybe there was a zoning change and they want to get additional floors approved. There could be a logical explanation, but early warning signs is part of that review of the draw and the documents. We're protecting our client. That's obviously paramount. We're protecting our client and their interests. We're monitoring the G703 and G702 versus the project. So that's the goal of what we're doing out there. Now let's look at how we do it. So the first document we're going to look at is the application for payment, also known as the G702, G703, also known as the draw, also known as the bank draw, also known as the requisition, also known as the rec, also known as the hard cost draw. So if you're getting the idea here that we have our own language out there on the construction site, that's true, and in the construction finance world. But all of these things say the same thing. Now, most often you'll hear abbreviated draw or G702. Doesn't matter. They're saying the same thing. The G702 and G703 refers to the American Institute of Architects have developed lots of different formats and templates for things. In their G series of documents, they've noted that the G702 is the signature page. I'm going to show you in a moment. And the G703 is the backup or detail page. It just so happens that that's the numbering system they use for those two documents. So that's what it's usually abbreviated to. Someone will say, if we finish inspection, I'll send you over the signed 702 tomorrow. This is what they're referring to. So all of these things say the same thing. They're the request for payment. Let's make sure we understand you don't have to use the AIA G702 or 3 by law. It's not a law. Now, you could have a housing finance agency that dictates it. You could have a financial institution, a syndicator, etc., but it's not a law. You don't have to use it by law. The other thing I'd caution you is you're not supposed to change the 702.3. We luckily have not been involved in a lot of projects that have gone down a lawsuit route for one reason or another, but I could tell you I've seen enough, both our projects and other projects, as well as reading trades, etc., that the 702.3 is a legally binding document that you're not supposed to change. You're not supposed to alter it, as it's a legally binding document. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Sometimes you'll have projects that will revise the schedule value, etc. That's fine from a spreadsheet standpoint, but certainly the cover 702 page, you're not supposed to change. And the concept is that the general contractor presents the funding request, this period of approval, and then we review it and we all come up to an agreement. The one thing that the 702.3 lacks, because it was created decades ago, it does include non-work in place requests in total, but it doesn't detail them out. I'll show you that in a moment. But one thing I do want to tell you and direct your attention to is the following. If you look at the 702, 703, on the G702, when the architect signs, it is a very powerful statement. It says, in accordance with the contract documents based on on-site observations and the data comprising above application, the architect certifies to the owner that, to the best of the architect's knowledge, information, and belief, the work has progressed as indicated. The quality of work is in accordance with the contract documents, and the contractor is entitled to payment of the amount certified. That's a very powerful statement. And it's the design professional, also known as the architect, RA, or could be a PE, that's signing and certifying that on the document. So before we dive into the documents, if you're thinking, all right, what do I really need to do to take away from this? Well, let me just save you some time. If you have 5 minutes, if you have 5 minutes to talk to me, if you have 5 minutes to look at our report, you got a call coming up and you got 5 minutes on the clock, what are the most important pieces that should be included in looking at the project in those 5 minutes? Number one, percent build versus percent complete. The difference between those two would be non-work in place, like a deposit. Number two, change orders approved this month. What's new this month for change orders? If you have 5 minutes, make that point number two in your 5 minutes. Number three, non-work in place this period. Hey, they want a window deposit. Okay, how much? 100,000, 200,000, $1 million. We should talk about that. How much do they want for that deposit? $1 million? No, 50,000. Okay, let's go through what's been requested. So that is part of that 5-minute look. Schedule status, any slippage, any change to the schedule overall this period. And when I say this period, you can interpret that as this month for most projects. But when we look at period, we line it up to how often a requisition is presented. And then the balance to complete, is it adequate? So those are kind of you have 5 minutes. What's most important? You're holding my report in your hand or you have it on your screen. These are your data points for your 5-minute quick look at the project. Let's take a look at the G702. And I like to do this because I think this is a pretty intimidating document from 30,000 feet. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to break it into easy, digestible parts for you. So remember, this is the application and certificate for payment. This is the AIA G702. This is the summary page. This is the signature page. You could have a $500,000 reno, $100 million new construction. They're each going to have one 702, which is your summary of backup pages. Your backup pages, we have some projects, the backup pages is 1. We have other projects, it's 20. We have other projects, it's 1.5 inches thick. But every project should summarize to one 702. So what does this say? First of all, top left, who and what? Who's on the deal? Owner, contractor, architect. What is the deal? Project. So your top left is, what are we talking about? What project and who's on it? Top right, current request. In the case I made up for you here, application 2 to 12/31, we have a contract date, we have an architect's project number and a distribution. So again, top left, what are we talking about? What deal and who's on it? Top right, current request. Middle left, change orders. That is a change order summary table. Some projects utilize it, some don't, and they just have it in the backup. But basically, you're going to line up your change order 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., and your date approved. So your change order summary is in this table, nothing more. Additions, price went up. Deductions, price went down. Middle right, request. We're going to dive into that in a second, but that's your request. That is the request for this period. Now we're getting toward the bottom, the GC, signature, and notary, which is the general contractor signs and has it notarized, and then the architect signs it. So that's it. Those are the components of this document. We have the top left, what project and who's on it. Top right, current request. Middle left, change order log. Middle right, request. And then the bottom, architect approval and general contractor approval. This is what a G703 looks like. Now, a G703 is a pretty straightforward document. And if you can understand line 1, you can understand any kind of iteration that you could come up with. Basically, what it has is the following. It has line items which build up to that 702. So, for example, in this case, we have concrete, schedule value, that's a $2 million cost. Work from previous application. So if this is requisition 2, I know requisition 1 had $1 million completed for concrete. Completed this period, $1 million. Materials presently stored, 0. And now it's all math. Now you have total complete and stored to date. Now you have percent complete, balance to finish, which is $2 million minus the $1 million, minus the $2 million completed, and retainage if it applies. That is basically how every G703 is set up with some variations, and it just repeats over and over and over. I'll point out one shortfall of this document. No offense to the people at AIA. This has one column called materials presently stored, which means in the case that we have here, I have gypsum board, sheetrock, $500,000 materials presently stored. That's fine. Someone is going to say, hey, we need to go take a look at this stored material. Where is it? Where's the warehouse? Is it protected? Is it labeled? Is it kept dry, etc.? The bad news is when we come back next month, that $500,000 will be buried in your previous application, D. You will not know for next month and on if that was completed work or stored work. From this document, it lacks that detail. I think if the AIA people were to generate an update of this document, and I have not heard one whisper that they would, you'd add several columns for deposits, submittals, engineering, etc. And then you'd also have stored materials. But the one thing this loses, just so we're all on the same page, is once you've completed this month, that materials presently stored moves to previous, and that detail is lost forever from next month and on. So it is one thing I'd caution you just to remember that is that it after this month, the usefulness of that column only gives you when you have a presently stored request. So just to give you an idea of the project we're looking at here, it was going to cost $9 million. which if you look in column C, $9 million, we've had change orders of $1 million, we're up to $10 million. Now, if you just look at my totals column, if you don't mind, totals is 10 million scheduled value. Again, 9 original, 1 million change order. We completed 2 million before today. We completed 2.5 million this period. We have 500,000 stored. So we're up to 5 million complete, which is 50%, 5 million left on the project. Now, I know these are very round numbers. I did that purposely. The one thing I'd say to you for advice here is when you look at a G703, whether it's 5 line items like this one, whether it's 500 line items, it doesn't matter. If you go down to the total row, which you see here is that $10 million row, that's your link to the 702. So in other words, the only thing that shows up here from a completion standpoint on the G702 is that total column as follows. It will be that request for this period, if you recall a few moments ago. So how does that work? First of all, the first 3 numbers are the cost. We know it was 9 million originally, 1 million change orders, it's up to 10 million. You notice I have not mentioned anything about completion. This project may not have started yet. Well, we have a change order. But the point is the top 3 numbers there are just about cost. They have nothing to do with completion yet. But those 3 line items, 9 million original, 1 million change order, 10 million is your cost. Okay, that's our cost. Good. This is your completion. Total completed and stored to date, 5 million. So we knew with the top 3 line items our cost, we knew 5 million is our completion. Now we have adjustments, which is retainage. You could have 5% retainage, which would be computed of the total completed stored to date. You could have 10%. You could have 0%. It depends by state. It depends by project. It depends who's involved. You also might see in here owner's equity. Whenever you hear owner's equity, just think the owner's paying directly. So I just called it adjustments. For our purposes, we have a retainage of $250,000. So we subtract $250,000 from the 4.75. So I could tell you right now, we're just about done. You need to pay the general contractor $4.75 million with one final consideration. What have they been paid already? Oh, they were paid $1.9 million, which is the previously completed minus retainage. So then you back that out, and that's the current payment due. So that's how you get to the current payment due. First few numbers are cost, then you have total completed stored to date, adjustments, and you back out what they've already been paid, $2.85 million. And then lastly, balance to finish plus retainage. I'll also point out the balance to finish plus retainage is a little bit of an oddball number. If you're following along, we know this is a $10 million project, of which $5 million is complete. So why would there be $5.25 million on this value? And the reason is we add the retainage into this value. It's available funds. Now, we hope that we're not going to need the retainage because the contractor walks off site, but it is available funds. And that retainage is a very real number that's readily available if things didn't go well as funds that we have for completion. Now, why would you keep retainage? And sometimes I'll train newer inspectors that may be very, very savvy at construction, but they'll say, I don't understand, why would you keep retainage? Well, number one, you could keep retainage for things like, for example, your roofer is 100% done, you pay them 95%, and you hold 5% retainage until they get you the warranty and guarantee. Okay, that's one very good real world example. I'll give you another one that happened. This is a real story, and I like when things are illustrated so well in the real world. We had a project, nice big project, and the framer was done, 100% done. All the framing was done. All the metal stud work was 100% done. That was their scope. And they wanted their retainage It was reduced. They wanted it released from 5% to 0. And the super said no. He said, I need a month after you're gone to make sure everything's where it should be. And the framer was not happy at all. Didn't threaten legal action, but it was not happy at all. Turns out, over the next month, the plumber came in and said, you have a problem. There was one wall that got changed because it backed up against the trash room. And the city wanted to see a little bigger trash room. So they had to move the wall a little in the one bathroom. And the plumber said, I'm about to start doing my rough plumbing. You have one wall in this building. I don't remember what line it was. Let's say it was the B line. He said, it's 6 inches off. It has to be moved. That was an error on the framer's part. They were going off an older plan set. So basically, it was a callback. The contractor called the framer, said, you have to come in, you have to fix this. They huffed and puffed. Then they realized it was their fault, and they came in and fixed it. They didn't charge anything because it was their error. There was a nice, clean paper trail to show that it was their error, and they did the work. Without the retainage, that would have been a different conversation potentially. So it's not, exactly fair in some instances, and certainly I understand reduction of retainage and outright release for certain subs, but I also understand where it gives a little cushion to the contractor just to make sure that sub A's work lines up with sub B. Now, with that said, we see projects all the time where you'll have a concrete sub that will say, listen, I finished the foundation. I'm done. All my test reports are passed. I've pulled all our workers off the job. We're across town on another job. You can't hold retainage on me until you finish the building 18 months from now. They have a very good point. So we look at retainage sub by sub as well as overall, and I think that's the most practical way to consider it. But that's a little bit of how retainage works, and why it's included here in the balance to finish consideration. Okay. That's the application for payment or the draw or the requisition. What's next? Lien waiver. This is a document that waives the ability to lien the property. It is usually from requisition 2 to the end. And the reason is because there's usually a reimbursement effort that goes on. So if the general contractor is submitting requisition 1, they can't give you a partial waiver of lien yet because they haven't paid everyone yet. They will, but they haven't. Once you get requisition 2, they'll say to you, oh, yes, we've paid everyone through our requisition 1, and here's a partial waiver of lien. It's a partial lien waiver until the end. Then it's final. Sometimes I'll see this get mistaken where someone will call a final lien waiver mid-project because it's signed or so. No. It's a partial lien waiver. You only get a final lien waiver once, and that's when all the work is done, all the work is funded, and all the work is paid for. This is for the general contractor. It could also be for the subs. I'm not an attorney. I'm a simple engineer and inspector, but I have had a few attorneys tell me if it's a stipulated sum, if it's a guaranteed maximum price, the general contractor is on the hook for the job, particularly stipulated sum. And a lien waiver, a partial lien waiver for the GC is all you need. You don't need the subs partial lien waivers because the GCs covers it. I've also seen some banks that will say, no. We want every sub to give us a partial waiver of lien as well. I'm not going to comment on which is better or worse. I'm kind of more leaning towards more paperwork's better just to show that. But I understand legally, if the general contractor says, look, I've been paid $9 million through today, I've paid everyone, here's a partial waiver of lien, that's an argument that I can understand. The other thing I'll tell you is that we like to see partial waivers of lien that have 2 numbers on them, conditional and unconditional. And remember, it's like conditional love and unconditional. Unconditional love, there's no question. Unconditional payment is through last month. It's paid. It's absolutely out the door paid. So let's say you have a project that has been paid $1 million a month after retainage. And today is month 9. So through month 8, they were paid $8 million. The unconditional dollar value in the partial waiver of lien is the $8 million amount. It's done, it's paid, it's history. You'll then see $1 million in the conditional amount, meaning it's a condition on them getting funded for this month. And then those two numbers together give you the total funding picture. So that's how conditional and unconditional work on way of a lien waiver. Also remember, this is not a release. A release is rare and releases someone's ability to claim funds. A lien waiver is just waiving the right to lien. So we had a project a number of years ago. No parties will be mentioned on this. And let's just say it was getting a little rocky. And one of the things is the bank said to the general contractor, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you've paid all your subs. I want partial waivers of lien from every sub. And within a week or two, they came back and they gave a partial waiver of lien from every sub. We all looked at it. There's a signature. There's a date. It's notarized. Great. Everyone was happy. We've come to find out they went to a couple of the subs and said, hey, I know I haven't paid you in 3 months. Sign this partial waiver of lien and I will get you paid. And the sub said, what choice do I have? And one of the subs must have mentioned this to an attorney and said, you know, I'm not going to get paid on this. I signed this lien waiver. And they said, whoa, you're going to get paid. All you've given up is your right to lien, not your right to claim that money. So long story short, there was a sit down, everything worked out. But it was interesting that I got to hear from an attorney's mouth, which is exactly where I like to get legal replies, who said, XYZ individual, they gave up their right to lien, but they didn't give up their right to claim the funds. So it's not a release. It's just waiving the right to lien. There is an AIA document. It's a more of a wordy kind of document like this as opposed to the 702.3. What do we look for? We want to match the previously paid to the unconditional amount and the current due to the conditional amount. So we want to match the numbers. Make sure everyone's playing nice in the sandbox. Contractor, the date, the sub, the numbers. Make sure that everyone's being paid downstream of the general contractor. How about change orders? Okay. First of all, by the letter of the law, a change order should be an increase in the base scope. So let's use a nice, easy example. You've stipulated some project. They're going to build it for $60 million. They're all in on $60 million. We're going to give you this building for $60 million. Everyone's happy. The shovel hits the ground. Now they hit a tank. There's no record of a tank. No one told them there was a tank. No environmental study or boring said there was a tank because it's been there on no paperwork for years and years and years. The contractor has to get the tank removed properly. They do so. It costs another $200,000. That's a change order. That should not come out of their pocket. As long as it's an unforeseen condition, like a tank. And by the way, about 60 or 65% of your ground up change orders will be in earthwork and conditions until your foundation's done. Renovations are a little different, obviously. But for ground up construction, 60 to 65% is what we see as a company. Your change orders come from zero to your foundation complete. Once your foundation's complete, you're more than halfway through your risk concerns about change orders. Again, generally speaking. If it's a fast track project, that skews a little because the less based the project is on the plan's readiness, the more you're going to have change orders later. You can't get everything. Can't have your cake and eat it too. You want to fast track, that's fine, but you're basing your budgeting on plans that are going to develop further down the road. But generally speaking, most change orders are in earthwork. So we want to see a fully executed change order by the owner, the architect, and the contractor. We look, is it needed? Is it reasonable? Is it adequate for approval? I was at a meeting a couple years ago with some competitors and a client, and we're having a kind of a roundtable discussion. It was terrific about lots of things, including change orders. And one of our competitors' names will not come into this conversation. We're kind of complaining about change orders, this and that. And I said, I don't look at it that way. First of all, I don't look at it emotionally, but to me, from our consulting standpoint, the first question is this scope needed? So the story that this person was telling was they had the cellar slab that was poured and the plumbing line that was put in by the plumber was the wrong diameter. So we had to rip up part of the cellar slab and they had to replace it and then do a new slab. So it's a change order. So I said, number one, do we have to do this? And he said, yeah, it's not code. They have to do this. I said, okay, we have no choice. We have to do that. That's good. Put that aside. Number two, is it reasonable? Meaning now that we know we have to do it, is it reasonable in their approach to what they want to do, how long it's going to take, and what it's going to cost? And this consultant like us said, yeah, it was reasonable. We looked at the time and materials. It was reasonable. I said, then to me, that's adequate for approval. Now, who's to blame? That's a different conversation. But when I'm looking at the project's successful completion and moving the ball down the field, needed, reasonable, adequate for approval is everything. We can get into the blame game. And by the way, I'll have an opinion about that. But needed, reasonable, adequate for approval, that's where we need to live with looking at change orders. We've had projects in the past that'll say, well, there's no change orders allowed. There's no contingency. That's not very real world. That's not very practical, except for real certain circumstances. Change orders are just a matter of construction. So that's where we sit. Is it needed? Is it reasonable? Is it adequate for approval? You also may have set markups in your general contract. That's something we look at when we do a plan and cost review. I like to see in a general contract where it says, hey, any change orders we have, there's going to be 15% markup for general contractor, general conditions, profit, and overhead. I like that. That's transparent because I can always look at the subs cost for the change order later. But if I know their markup, then I really have, there's going to be no issues with what the total cost is going to be. I don't want to see some negotiation about the change order markup when we're already in the middle of the project. So we like to see set markups in general contract when it's applicable. I'll also caution you, credit change orders often do not have general contract credit. I'll give you an example. There's a little bit of a weird example, but I think it illustrates it. Let's say you have a project that is not going to do an emergency generator. Actually, we have one like this. This is why I use this one. No generator. Okay, great. 3 months into the project, the owner says, you know what? I want a generator. Okay, sounds good. So the general contractor goes out, contacts the electrician. Turns out the change order is coming in and the generator is going to be $100,000. So the change order is going to be $115,000 with the GC's markup. So if you said to me, what is the generator going to cost in this job? I'd say $115,000. Great. Now let's say you have a similar project where you're doing a generator and for some weird reason, the owner says, you know what? I don't want a generator. I want a credit change order. If you expect to see a $115,000 credit change order, you're going to be disappointed. It's going to be $100,000. It's going to be just the subs cost. And if you say, why is that? The general contractor will argue to you, well, I already put the time and effort into going through that, bidding it out, scheduling it, etc. And that's a sunk cost. So I'm only cautioning you that if you see change orders that come in with markups, very common. If you see credit change orders that come in with no markup removed, also common. We look for that in the general contract. Often it's not noted or detailed. It's not a big issue, but it's something to note. We also want to see, is the schedule extended or not? Most change orders don't utilize this, which always surprises me a little. You should only worry about if a change order affects the schedule if it's on the critical path and it affects the schedule. Not to get into a whole critical path discussion, but let's say the generator, let's say they're going to add a generator and you have 6 more months in the project. No, you have 10 more months in the project. And they say, yeah, if we pull the trigger on this generator, we could have it bought, shipped here, installed, wired, everything within a month and a half. That's not going to extend the schedule. So we want to see, is it going to extend the schedule? Most often it's not, but sometimes change orders do. So something to look for right in your change order, there'll be a number of calendar days extending the contract time. Keep an eye on it if it's something in the critical path that may be utilized and they've just legally bound, put to paper a delay because of a change order. This is an example of a change order. Again, the top section kind of sets a table for the project. The middle section tells you what the contract sum was, what the change order is going to be, and the new amount. And then the bottom section has the signature lines for architect, contractor, and owner. It's one page. Your backup could be anywhere from 0 to 100 pages. You could have all sorts of backups, sketches, proposals, invoices, etc. And you notice this is a G701, which is also in the G series for the AIA documents. Schedule. We want to say to the general contractor, how often are you going to update the schedule? Sometimes they'll update it based on milestones. Sometimes it's every month. Sometimes they never update it. We can't make them update it, but we can discuss it every month, and we do. So it's a matter of if you've updated it, general contractor, I want a copy. I want to review it. But we'll ask how often it's updated. We also look at milestones, and milestones are key to us. Foundation completion, superstructure, temporary waterproof, framing layout done, rough mechanicals, wall ceilings, floors closed up, punch list. We like milestones because the project's moving from one phase to another. For example, when your foundation's done, great milestone because now we're building in air. When your superstructure is done, great milestone because now we could load the building up with workers to really advance the project. Temporary waterproof is a great milestone because now we could work inside and we're not going to get wet and we can control the weather a little bit. We also look at critical paths. So just to use, I like to use a very simple example. You live in an apartment or a house, you have a bathroom and a kitchen, and let's say you're going to redo both of them and you say, you know what, I'm going to GC this myself. I've watched KOW's reports enough, I can do this. So you hire one company to renovate your kitchen and one to renovate your bathroom. I'm going to use very easy math. Your bathroom says it's going to take them 2 months. Your kitchen sub says it's going to take 2 months. Your bathroom subs, it's going to take 1 month. In this case, your kitchen is your critical path because it's the longest period of time that is a direct route to completion. Assuming you start your kitchen and bathroom on the same day, your bathroom will be done in 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks after that, your kitchen's done. So if your bathroom sub says, hey, I'm going away for a week, I'm not going to be done in 4 weeks, I'm going to be done in 5 weeks, you're not that concerned because you're not moving back in for 8 weeks. They're not delaying you. But if your kitchen person says, you know what, that a vacation sounds pretty nice, I'm going to join you on your vacation. No. You can't make it 9 months now because you are my critical path. So we want to look at critical paths on project to see what's driving the project. When the project starts through the superstructure completion, your critical path is finish the building, meaning the structure. Then once you load it up with all sorts of workers and rough work, you have a number of different paths. Most projects have 2 critical paths. 1, utilities, and 2, elevator. And the reason it's elevator is if you have a temporary elevator, for example, in New York City, if you're over 75 feet construction height, you have to have a hoist. And your construction hoist is what you use for your workers, emergency personnel, materials, etc. during construction. You can't remove your hoist until you finish your elevator. You can't waterproof, do windows, etc. on your hoist run apartments until you remove it. You can't finish the inside of your hoist run apartments until you remove it. So your elevator is a critical path very, very often on projects. Have you ever seen projects that get a certificate of occupancy excluding hoist run apartments? I have. I've absolutely seen that. And you can do that. So that's where we look at the schedule. What's the critical path? What's really driving the total end date for the project? We also look at an S-curve versus an average monthly. So an average monthly is pretty simple. If you have a 10-month project, you have to produce 10% per month. If you have a 20-month project, you have to produce 5% per month. Average monthly, pretty straightforward. But a new construction project really operates in a different way. It starts, quote unquote, slow, and it ends, quote unquote, slow. And in the middle, it moves along very well. What I mean is, in the first phase of the project, you're not doing a lot of work, excavation, foundation, even up to your superstructure. And then your structure is built, and now you load the project up. You're doing rough plumbing, mechanical, fire sprinkler, elevator, framing, insulation, flooring, trim, doors, windows, you name it. And you're moving along, moving along, moving along. Now you get toward the end and it starts to slow down. Slow down in the sense of workers are finishing. They're off the job. You're doing painting, you're doing trim. It's not advancing that much. So if you look at that schedule, it resembles an S, meaning it's kind of low, then it hums along, and then it flattens out. There's all different types of schedules. Most schedules are some sort of, task, start date, end date. They might have predecessors or prerequisites where, you can't do sheetrock until your fire caulking's done. So we'll look at that when we analyze schedules, and a great super knows that's how you advance a project, is they're really, really up on all those different pieces. And then just to close up our webinar today, logs. So a log is a summary. We want to see it monthly, which is fine, unless something critical or big or an issue, etc., happens between our inspections. And then we say to the contractor, let us know immediately. If something happens that we should be notified, we should be notified immediately. Otherwise, a monthly log is fine. What are some examples? A buyout log. A buyout log tells you how much in the subcontractor work is secured. So if your contractor says, hey, good news, I just talked to the plumber, we came to terms, they're going to do the project for $1,850,000. That plumbing work is bought out. It's secured. They may have to work out the details of the subcontract, but it's secured. The street, the market has told that contractor what the project can be completed for. On a 0 to 100 basis, the buyout log will show you each sub, each buyout, and then a percentage overall. So a buyout log, we love to see those, particularly in today's environment. The tariffs, price of oil, what's going on with inflation. We're really keeping an eye on buyouts and costing. So that's a log we really want to see each month. Sometimes it'll be way of an anticipated cost report, ACR, where you'll have the column for the schedule value and then the column for the bought amount, which is great. It shows us just kind of the tracking. And then, of course, we'll say any big issues, any big surprises. And usually the contractor will say, no, everything came in pretty much what we thought, a little more, a little less. Oh, but the lighting package, that came in more than we thought. Okay, now we're going to talk about the lighting package for a while. So that's where we want to see how the rubber meets the road. The conceptual budget's great, but the real world subbed budget is where we need to see that we're going to end up. Request for information log, RFI log. This is questions from the general contractor to the architect. So the GC says, hey, I have a question on this. This says 6 inches insulation. This says 4 inches. They get that question back to the architect via an RFI. For us, and this is something that I mentioned kind of the face-to-face, we want to see what are the questions. Do there seem to be some issues or some real holes in the plans? Is the architect replying to those RFIs in a timely manner? We don't want to see the contractor delayed because the architect may be very good conceptually, but is really lacking getting those information responses back to the contractor. So we want to see if it's painting a picture that, for example, maybe the architect is very busy, they bought off more than they could chew, and they're not getting those replies back. I've had projects where the contractor's saying to the architect, hey, you got to get back to me on this stuff. You're starting to delay me. That's not fair. They're due those replies in a certain time frame as per the contract. So the RFI log tells us what clarifications does the GC need from the architect? How responsive are they? Submittal or shop drawing log. This tracks the specific details needed for the shop. I will say this sometimes gets confused out there, I've noticed. A shop drawing is not produced by the architect. A shop drawing is produced by the shop, who's going to make that specific thing very, very definitively, very detailed. And the architect needs to say approved. So if you take structural steel, your shop drawing is going to not only tell you how long it's going to be, how thick it's going to be, how strong it's going to be, the flange, the web, but where the pilot holes go, where the brackets will be secured, etc. Your shop drawing is a big effort by the shop for the architect to say approved. And now they're going to turn the machines on and produce this equipment. And it's critical. It's just a critical piece. Often you see 5 to 10% requested for shop drawings. It's a critical piece to keep the project moving. You have a change order log. You have executed change orders. That's fully signed. Owner, architect, contractor. Then you have potential change orders and pending change orders. I see these put in the same group a lot. I don't think that's very fair. A potential change order is, again, I like easy examples. We show up on site and the contractor says, hey, bad news. We're at a corner here and we're bringing the electric service off the front of the building. The electric company wants to meet next week. They may want us to bring the electric service off the side street. That's a potential change order. You say, hey, how much is that going to cost? I don't know, probably $100,000. That's a potential change order. Now we come out next month and say, hey, how did the meeting go with the electric company? And they say, bad news. We have to move the point of entry from the front to the side. That's now a pending change order. So the potential may or may not come to be. The pending is coming. It's just maybe the numbers and the agreement's not fully worked out. So the change order log will have these things outlined. We want to see them. The scale, if there's issues, if there's delays, how much the amounts are, to see that on the change order log. Controlled inspection log is the status of the past inspections. In New York City, this would generally be by a third party, for example, Controlled Inspections LLC. In other areas, it might be by the building department or the village employee. So controlled inspection log tells you where are we with past inspections, or more importantly, non-compliance report or failed inspections. Permit log tracks the permits by the trade, the date, etc. Obviously, we want to see this. You have a lot of different permits for your different work in most areas. So we want to see what's been pulled, who's working, who's on the job, are they mobilized, etc. So that pretty much does the end of my webinar. I know we have about a minute left. I know that's not a lot of time. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and then open it back up. If anyone has any questions, I know we're just about out of time. You can please put them in there. But again, kenf@kowbc.com. If anyone has any questions, we're always open. Let us know. We're just about 2 o'clock. So I want to thank everyone for watching. Have a good rest of your week and weekend. Let us know if there's anything we can do. And I hope this was helpful. Thank you.